Good morning. My name is Myron, Frans, Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget. The governor has asked me to conduct this press conference today. He really wanted to be here, but he's not feeling well, to put it mildly. As you know, this is going around. I'm actually been fighting a cough myself, so I'll try to keep this going as best I can. I'm going to grab the water while I can to make sure I've got it available. So what we wanted to do today, because today is the statutory required date that we release the capital budget bill or bonding bill every other year, every even numbered year. So the governor really wanted to be here today, and he really sends his regrets because this is such an important project. And I've told this to many, many people, that the governor individually reviews all of these bonding proposals. We had over $3 billion in requests this year, and the governor really wanted to be here, but I'll try to do my best to go through that. And then in addition to my going over the bonding bill, the numbers, I'll also have President Kaler from the University of Minnesota and Chancellor Malhotra from Minnesota State University and Colleges here to kind of go through their part of the recommendation. Governor Dayton today is introducing a $1.5 billion public works proposal that would make urgently needed investments to build world-class colleges and universities for Minnesotans and improve and repair state buildings and other critical infrastructures across the state. Given the significant need for investments in higher education institutions statewide, Governor Dayton's proposal would invest $542 million at the University of Minnesota and Minnesota State campuses. An additional $998 million would be directed to improving state buildings, building affordable housing, repairing clean water infrastructure, and other infrastructure projects across Minnesota. Governor Dayton's public works proposal would create an estimated 22,950 jobs, and it would support statewide economic growth. Thanks to the governor's strong fiscal management, the state of Minnesota has a AAA bond rating, and we have over a $3.5 billion bonding capacity at this time, based upon our ability to maintain a good credit rating and also our ability to pay off the former debts we've had in the past. Governor Dayton's public works proposal would remain within our statutory debt guidelines. This would protect the state's financial standing and make critical investments in our economy. I just want to read one quote from Governor Dayton because it's so critical to get his input today. Since 2011, we have made many important investments in Minnesota's aging classrooms, buildings, and other critical infrastructure. But those investments have not kept pace with the enormous need for infrastructure improvements across Minnesota. Years of underinvestment have shortchanged our economy, our higher education institutions, and the vitality of our communities. He goes on to say, now is the time to make substantial investments in our state's future. The governor's saying my public works proposal would make significant needed investments to provide world-class education for our students, guarantee clean and affordable clean water for our communities, and ensure our state has the infrastructure necessary to grow and compete in the modern economy. Now, Governor Dayton's proposal prioritizes these strategic investments in higher education, but would also maintain and improve investments in the state building and infrastructure around the state, including affordable housing, and deliver clean, reliable, and affordable drinking water for Minnesotans across the state. These urgently needed investments are critical. Let me give you just one example. About 50% of the state higher education buildings are currently in the state, and higher education buildings are currently in fair or worse condition. It costs an average of 70% more to repair a structure in poor condition than a building that is in fair condition. And we all know this from the way we maintain our own homes and businesses. Governor Dayton's public works proposal would include projects that are distributed across the state. I just want to mention briefly, as a state's chief financial officer, talk about the fact that we can afford a $1.5 billion bonding bill. The investment in our state buildings and other critical infrastructure have not kept pace with our growing need. It would cost an estimated $8 billion over the next decade to completely restore and maintain our current state and higher education infrastructure. This $1.5 billion public works bill remains well within our state's affordable bonding capacity. The governor's proposal is a smart investment in Minnesota's future, and reduces a backlog of deferred maintenance before the cost of these urgently needed projects escalates even further. I want to mention several comments from the state credit rating agencies. Standard & Poor's noted that the credit factors support the ratings in Minnesota, and they view our debt as a moderate debt levels with well-defined debt management guidelines. Standard & Poor's also says that the state amortizes debt at a rapid rate and has a debt affordability metrics that keep debt levels moderate. Finch says that Minnesota's combined debt and unfunded pension liability is a low burden on resources in line with the state median as measured against personal income. Remember, these are folks outside of Minnesota evaluating Minnesota's debt capacity. Fitch also says the state has a well-established debt policy that controls issuance and requires rapid amortization of general obligation debt. In addition to the state, the education investment and the state agency investment that I mentioned of $1.5 billion, the governor notes that communities across Minnesota have submitted proposals for $858 million in other urgently needed local bonding projects. They have demonstrated a significant need for substantial infrastructure investments in the upcoming legislative session. Though these local projects are not part of the governor's current bill, the governor believes that these projects merit state investment, and he looks forward to working with the legislature to include many of these local projects in any final bonding bill in the 2018 legislature. If you look at the schedule that we've handed out, you'll see that the governor has at the top of the page, I'm sorry. At the top of the page, the governor has listed the investing in world-class colleges and universities of $542 million, and the President Kaler and Chancellor Malhotra will talk about that in a moment. But you also see the second category, maintaining and improving state infrastructure of $998 million. A large amount of that, $167 million, go toward local water infrastructure that covers projects around the state and provide needed support for communities throughout Minnesota. The housing infrastructure is $115 million, once again, around the state, supporting important projects around Minnesota. The preserving state assets of $458 million involves making improvements to many state projects, including a DNR, which are also projects located around the state. And we also have some other state and local infrastructure projects of $238 million. All of these are listed individually in the handout material that we have. What I'd like to do now is have Chancellor Malhotra is next, right? Or is it President? President Kaler is going to come up next and present some information about the University of Minnesota. I'll take my water so he doesn't drink out of my water. President Kaler.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Governor Dayton, for your extraordinary support today and over the entire span of his years as governor. Governor has been a wonderful friend to the university, and this commitment today demonstrates how much he values higher education and the role the university plays on all of our campuses across the state of Minnesota. Extension and research and outreach centers which fuel innovation and drive the state's workforce. And thank you, of course, to the governor's staff and to our partners at MMB. This recommendation today aligns perfectly with my vision for the U when it comes to capital investment. We even have a Twitter hashtag about that vision so we can advocate for it in the months to come. It is renew, #UMN, #renew UMN. And that's what our goal is around facilities, and clearly what the governor's is too, renewal. Particularly in support for HEAPR. The governor has joined us in our goal of renewing much of our 29 million square feet of facilities. And on our Twin Cities campus alone, more than 50% of our facilities are 50 years old or older. They need to be renewed so that our students can learn in spaces that best prepare them for Minnesota's 21st century workforce. And our facilities across our system need to be renewed so that our faculty can conduct the research that our nation, our state, and the world needs. and our buildings need to be renewed so that our staff can work in safe and accessible places. Plus, the governor's continued and deep support for the university's health sciences and its medical school is truly appreciated. This recommendation is a remarkable linchpin for success for our university and our state. We offer great thanks to Governor Dayton and his staff. And we at the university look forward to working with him during the upcoming session to turn this recommendation and our shared vision of renewal into reality. A large bonding bill can be a tremendous investment in the future of Minnesota. Much of our need is urgent, and together we will work with the legislature because we have an opportunity for great progress. Thank you, and now welcome the Chancellor of Minnesota State University's Devinder Malhotra.
Thank you, President Kaler, and Commissioner Frans, thank you. Please convey, Commissioner Frans, to Governor Dayton our appreciation for his incredibly strong recommendation for investment in the assets our colleges and universities maintain for students on behalf of the people of Minnesota. These assets, the facilities on our 54 campuses all across the state, enable us to deliver on our compact with the citizens of Minnesota. Our colleges and universities impart social and economic vibrancy most directly to the 47 communities in which our campuses are located, but more broadly to the entire state. Every year, Minnesota State welcomes more than 375,000 students who dream of being our state's next generation of professionals and leaders. The facilities supported in the governor's recommendations are the bricks and mortar where the magic of higher education takes place, where our students' dreams for a better future come true, where they become the talent Minnesota absolutely must have if it is going to continue to thrive in today's knowledge-based global economy. Given our long-standing and continuing focus on workforce alignment, the governor's recommendations not only benefit our students, but indeed every Minnesotan. Maintaining and modernizing the aging infrastructure of Minnesota State campuses will ensure that each and every student at our colleges and universities stays warm, safe, and dry, and our campuses keep operating efficiently. This asset preservation work is our #1 capital investment priority. It'll reduce the impact on our colleges and universities' budgets from funding repair and maintenance and provide us with more funds to support our students' educational experiences. I'm also delighted that the governor's recommended funding will support 15 major capital projects on Minnesota State campuses in nearly every region of our state, projects that are designed to directly benefit students and to provide a much-needed expansion of our educational and training programs aimed at meeting the talent needs of the workforce. Again, we appreciate Governor Dayton's leadership and advocacy for public higher education and for the students who benefit from it and for the state's future workforce. We are excited about the governor's $1.5 billion bonding bill and the needed investments it represents. We look forward to working with the governor and his staff in the upcoming legislative session. Thank you.
Questions?
Commissioner, the size, it's fair to say this is a large, hefty bonding bill?
It's a robust bonding bill, and I'm so happy just to have gotten through this first presentation. I may have not conveyed the governor's sense of urgency and enthusiasm over this bill. I've had the pleasure to work with the governor now for 7 years, and every year that we've worked through bonding projects and bonding proposals, he comes to the table looking to see what is the best package, what's that best combination of bonding projects. He fervently believes that $1.5 billion is the right number to go forward and to look at including local projects as well.
In recent years, the proposals for big bonding bills have had in their favor low interest rates and relatively high unemployment in the construction sector. Now, both of those circumstances have changed. What's the economic justification for a big bonding bill at this time?
Last October, we sold over $800 million in bonds, and we saved over $40 million based on the interest rates we were able to get at that time. Part of that was through refunding and restructuring some of our existing debt, and part of that was as a result of getting the low interest rates. Some of the rates we got were under 2%. The rates are not quite as low, but the market is still relatively low for bonding, for bonds, and we look, especially Minnesota bonds. I mean, we have been very, very successful in going to the market and selling Minnesota bonds over the years, and we think that's going to continue. Now, I think the other thing that in terms of the job situation, clearly we have a tightening labor market going forward. And in fact, one of the smart investments we can make is in education and training and opportunities for people to get good training and good education to become part of our workforce. We do believe that this bonding project is sustainable given the people available in Minnesota to fund these projects and to work on these projects. So we're very optimistic that this is the right bill at the right time.
Commissioner, a little bit over 10% is for water infrastructure and related projects. Will you talk a little bit about what the emphasis is going to be from the governor on that specifically?
The water projects are really, as you know, this last year the governor has focused on water quality throughout the state of Minnesota. And one of the really concerns that he's had is to make sure that this is a statewide issue. It's not a metro issue. It's not a greater Minnesota issue. It is a Minnesota issue. And one of the things that he wanted to make sure that we put money in the pipeline, so to speak, to be available to local communities throughout the state to tap into the public facilities management system and to get loans and grants to improve their water quality, to reduce groundwater pollution from happening in the very beginning. So the whole concept of clean and affordable water is one that Governor Dayton has described to you all before, something that he came to during his administration and feels that it is an absolute must and priority for us going forward.
I think you said that the governor supports some local projects that are not in the bill. Why aren't they in the bill?
The governor wanted to focus this bill, the $1.5 billion, on education with the University of Minnesota and Minnesota State University and in the statewide assets that we have around, around the state. We often struggle with the mixture of state projects and local projects, and the governor felt that I think the number I gave was $858 million of local projects. He believed that there are a lot of really well-deserving projects in that group of projects, and they should be considered by the legislature. We often go through this process, and we look forward to work with the legislature to find out from the legislature what are the local projects that they want to invest in, and how can the local communities work with the legislature and with us to try to get more of those local projects into the bonding bill. But they're not in now, but our goal is to consider those as we go forward.
Is it fair to say the governor feels a sense of urgency in his last bonding bill, especially with those projects that have, been on his wish list for several years running? Yeah,
it's clearly part of his priority, but think of the things on this list. Infrastructure, water infrastructure. That is a timeless problem that we need to solve. Look at affordable housing. How important, that continues every year, every month. We hear more and more stories about the need for affordable housing. So all of these projects, the education, the training, the investment in our young people going forward, the investment in our workforce, these are timeless issues that the governor has been fighting for the last 7 years. And yes, they're high on his priority list, this last bonding bill. And yes, we'd like to see this bill pass in its totality. And I'm assuming it will be, but that's my comment, not the governor's.
Commissioner, in your November forecast, you anticipated an $800 million bonding bill. Now it's almost double that amount. It happened in, 6 weeks between forecasting this announcement?
What did you say, what happened?
Yeah, did something change that the governor decided to spend a lot more?
Well, obviously, we will take a look. We will take a look at the February forecast to see what kind of resources we have available. We'll have to reconsider this bonding proposal in light of whatever the February forecast is. But I think the governor's review in the last 6 weeks since the November forecast has been to examine what is it that we could do that would have the best and longest lasting effect for Minnesota, for the economy, for education, for water quality and affordable housing. So there really wasn't a change. The governor really went into this bonding bill with the idea that he wanted a robust bonding bill. we understand that we'll have to take a look at the assets available in the February forecast, and we hope that we'll have enough resources to fully fund this bonding bill.
Next question here.
Question for the President and for the Chancellor. Kind of a two-part question. The first one for President Kaler only. Mr. President, this is very heavily weighted toward asset preservation. You don't really have any big ticket items. You have quite a bit in the past. Don't you need those, or are you emphasizing higher asset preservation?
We made a very conscious decision this year to come back to focus really on renewal. So if you look at Heeper, you look at Pillsbury, you look at our projects in greater Minnesota, you look at Glensheen, all of those really have a common theme of renewal. And we made a decision to do that in conversations with the governor and with legislative leaders, in which the idea of a new bright, shiny object, if you will, is simply not as attractive right now as a prudent investment. We have about $4.2 billion over a 10-year period of deferred maintenance at the university. You can think of our physical plan as an endowment that we need to maintain so that it doesn't depreciate. And we feel that the timing is right for us to come now back with a very focused theme around renewal. So that's a highly conscious decision.
Along the same line, and something that the Chancellor alluded to, question for both of you. With this kind of funding for Heeper, if you do indeed get that, or something close to it, what kind of effects does it have on tuition?
From our perspective, I think, you know, our commitment is to fund these through financing of these bonds. And I think we've already worked that into our budgets, so I don't see any additional impact on tuition or on our budgets.
That's essentially true for us, with a slight lean in the fact that if we do get additional Heeper money, it reduces the amount of state O&M money that we need to invest in critical infrastructure repairs. That in turn reduces the need for us to raise tuition dollars above. So there's a modest positive influence on the price of tuition by a significant bonding investment.
Do you see any effect on tuition this cycle?
It'll be very minor, if at all, but again, it's the absence of an upward pressure rather than a downward pressure.
Follow up on that, if I may. In these two higher education requests, are there particular projects that would address the state's workforce shortage? Are there projects that will increase your capacity to enroll students?
On our side, and of course Devinder can speak for Minnesota State, a great many of the Heeper projects are exactly that, capacity expanding. For example, we're making an investment in food and agriculture on the St. Paul campus. That's a facility with which we collaborate with many companies, growing the economics of those companies and creating the workforce that goes in there. So the opportunity to have higher through cycles in laboratories means we put more students through, creating more graduates ready to go to work.
Everyone good? Thank you.
Thank you.